Let's talk about the interview itself. So the screening conversation is one thing. I think that that can happen primarily over text, really just a quick conversation. When it comes to interviews, I said there are three things that are important to have. One is structure, two is situations, and three is a level of independence. So when I talk about a level of independence, what I mean is you want multiple people to interview and you want to do it separately. Now, for front level people, maybe we don't care. It's low risk. We're going to throw people into a job and see if it works. But for high level people, to really get a good opinion, we need multiple points of data. And so I'm in favor of taking your interview questions that you have and splitting them in half to two interviews. I do think that if you go to three interviews, it becomes a lot and your process slows down. But there are circumstances where maybe it makes sense. I think one interview is just not enough look at an individual to really get a good sense for them. And so I like two as the sweet spot. I split it in half. And then the structured, scored, and situational looks like this. So these are two questions. Actually, I have three questions that I used when I was hiring that same landscape estimator. So one thing that I wanted to make sure is that they could use Excel. And I didn't really feel like it was worth slowing down the process by paying for an Excel skills-based test that they would take. Plus, it's pretty easy to cheat on those things. And so I wanted to ask them a really good question that would tell me their level of Excel. And a lot of hiring people might say, how often do you use Excel? Or would you consider yourself an advanced user of Excel? I asked, what specific functions and formulas do you use in Excel? And so it put it on them to come up with the answer. And a 5-point answer would be something that shows intermediate use of Excel, including formulas such as if, sum if, or XLOOKUP, or match. Pivot tables or charts are also strong answers. The interviewee should go beyond basic formulas such as sum, counter, average. And so maybe that level of knowledge is beyond your personal knowledge of Excel. And you may need some help developing these questions. But for me, as someone who's done estimating in Excel, I know that if someone's going to say, I use sum if, I use match, I use pivot tables, then there are probably 5 points on this. And if they tell me they use sum, counter, average, they're probably 2 points. But I even had people who interviewed for this job and said in screening that they used Excel and then couldn't name a single Excel function. And so this provides a very clear, objective answer. In this case, this person, landscape estimator, was working in an office and in a collaborative way. And so we asked, what type of work environment do you thrive in? And some people said, I love to be in a truck or in the field, because they were really field managers trying to position themselves as this landscape estimator job. So in this case, we specified that a weak answer would be in the field or a truck or an open office with constant interaction. We wanted them to name an office with open lines of communication that was like semi-private. And we just based that off of what the environment would look like. This is a compatibility type question. So if you're in HR or you're involved in interviewing or screening people, I think that you roll out a set of questions like this in conjunction with the manager who's going to be managing them. And then the last step is to have situational questions. So this question 13 was, we had 15 questions on part 1 and 15 questions on part 2, 0 overlap in the questions. Question 13 on part 2 was situation. You're working on an important estimate due in 3 days, requires all of your attention. Out of the blue, another opportunity arises that's due at the same time. And on top of that, job in the field you estimate needs your attention. There's only one of you. What do you do? There's no right answer, but we figured out that a strong answer would consider their time management system and ability to add more capacity without seeking help from others first. But in this situation, the demands will most likely need help. So they should be able to articulate how they'll approach their supervisor and renegotiate priorities and be clear about capacity, but also express a desire to go above and beyond with working late and Saturday if needed. Because that's the cultural expectation in this place at the company. So our job when developing these questions was to go to the managers, go to the company, figure out their culture, figure out their working, and then build situations where we could let candidates either answer correctly or select themselves out of the process. And again, I did the first interview If they scored above a certain threshold in terms of actual points, then I would refer them to my partner, who within 48 hours would give them the second interview. And if they scored a certain amount of points, then we would recommend them to move forward. My partner did not know anything about them. He never saw their resume. I never told him any thoughts. He was interviewing entirely blind based on his rubric. And so when we got together to discuss the quality candidate, we had contrasting or agreed points that were coming from separate lenses, which is so valuable in figuring out true talent.